to find out how much activity there was in the field of reporting. And like I said, the participation today only goes to show that this is indeed the case. And actually the numbers of reports in the database today, they also go to prove that. So but you will be hearing about that more later. So today we are obviously here to celebrate the launch of the survey that was done on reporting trends in Taiwan in 2015. And we were lucky enough to be asked to contribute to this publication, GRI, by providing some insight into global trends in reporting. So, oh, I forgot.
他刚才讲的比较多，然后我就简单的翻译一下。首先是很高兴能够参加今天的活动，尤其是看到今天这个座位几乎是满座的状况。3年前他来到台北的时候，不知道在台湾有这么多的报告机构，然后尤其是过去的2年半的时间里面，发生了很多新的政策动向的变化，才有了今天的这个盛况。这次报告的成果，一会儿我会做一些更多的介绍，也会看到台湾在GRI的数据库中一个显著报告数量的增长。
I totally forgot to introduce my colleague Yuan.
他完全忘了后面还有人给他做翻译。
Who is here making it all possible for me to communicate with you today by helping me to translate, and she is excellent at that. So apologies for that, Yuan. And now we continue. So let's begin. So I wanted to just quickly refer to GRI's role in policy making, because what we all know is obviously the GRI has produced a standard for reporting, and so our guidelines and reporting framework that we have now are working with the 4th version of. But more frequently now, we are also beginning to focus on the role of GRI in policy making, and I want to have a couple of slides on that to begin with.
在我今天演讲的开始的话，我会介绍一下 GRI 在政策制定中的角色，因为大家可能都比较熟悉 GRI 的角色是作为一个永续标准的开发者。我到现在我们已经有第4个版本的指南了，但是可能大家对 GRI 在政策制定方面的一些工作不是很了解，所以我今天会从这个部分开始。
So we call it enabling smart policy. And one of the main roles of GRIs is to help bridge build a bridge between business and governments. And we do this by ensuring that sustainability issues are considered in global policy by working with governments, capital market regulators, and international organizations. And at the moment, there are over 40 countries and regions that use GRI as references in their sustainability policies, or look to our guidance, our framework for guidance in this respect.
我们把 GRI 在政策方面的工作定义的为助力智慧型政策。我们是希望所有的GRI 能够发挥一个把政策和商业机构联络起来的一个桥梁，能够使得机构在考虑他们在全球运营的一些永续的话题，都考虑在他们的生产和那个政策决定的过程中，所有的政府和这个资本市场，还有市场监管机构，还有国际组织，都是 GRI 的紧密合作伙伴。目前已经有42个国家和地区在他们的永续发展政策中寻求 GRI 或者直接援引 GRI 的标准。
And we do definitely not work alone. We have a very long-standing collaboration with a variety of international organizations. You can see the logos of some of them there. These are both intergovernmental organizations and international non-governmental organizations. And together with our partners, we have all kinds of joint activities to connect GRI standards to other relevant initiatives. And for instance, we have developed several linkage documents to link to other initiatives like the UN Global Compact Principles, ISO 26000, and CDP, to name a few.
GRI 的这些工作绝非是独立完成的，我们一直都是和全球的各类国际组织和非政府组织共同合作。大家可以看到右边这些一系列 logo 的展示的话，都是 GRI 的战略合作伙伴。我们目前除了和这些机构合作以外，也和他们开发一些关联性的文件，比如我们和 这个 OECD 还有ISO 开发的关联文件。
And as I mentioned already, we are starting to work more and more with both governments and also with capital markets. And here you see some of the institutions with whom we have a very strong relationship. And you can see the Taiwan Stock Exchange, of course, is amongst them, and also various other ones.
除了政府和国际组织以外，嘉也和资本市场和政府监管机构有紧密的合作。这一页的话，都是在嘉的和嘉有合作的证券市场的主要的包括有 WFE IOSCO 比如这边大家有看到有台湾证券交易所也是其中之一。
So all in all, this is how we work to help use what we have produced to enable smart policies. We don't want people to reinvent the wheel, rather to focus on using the tools that so many thousands of organizations are already using to make it easier for the reporters. And what we have also found that using GRI standards brings trust into the marketplace. And they also help the organizations to find strategic solutions, and they elevate the quality of sustainability reporting, because by using the GRI guidelines, then we are all using the same language.
GRI 做这些工作的一个原则就是希望全球各类的机构不用去重新做这方面的重复的工作，而是能够共同使用同样的语言。那使用 GRI 的标准的话，可以帮助提升市场的信任度，也可以帮助机构寻找有策略性的解决方案。最后的话 ，GRI 的标准也能够帮助提升永续性报道的品质。
And just a small proof of the success of the GRI guidelines or the wide use of them. KPMG issues on a regular basis a survey of the status of corporate responsibility reporting, and the latest one was issued in November last year. And their finding was that the GRI remains the most popular reporting guideline worldwide. And 60% of companies that were researched in their survey, they either use or reference GRI. And out of the 250 largest companies in the world, 74% of them are using or referring to GRI.
KPMG 每2年都会发布他们的全球责任报道的研究。那他们最近的研究是2015年年底发布的。根据他们最新的调查表明，60%的被调查机构都是援引 GRI 的指南，而在全球前250家企业中，这个比率更高，是74%。
So now I want to actually get into a little bit of statistics, but that are all based on our sustainability disclosure database. But before I do so, I want to state a disclaimer that is a very important one, because as you know, reporting according to GRI is in most cases voluntary, and we develop our guidelines as free public good. So anybody can go to our website and download them, and they don't have to let us know. So people don't have to report back to us, meaning that we don't know about all the reports that are out there in the world, but we do our very best to track them down and include them in the database. And we cannot do this alone, and we work with a network of data partners around the world. And some data partners are extremely efficient, like the ones we have here in Taiwan, for instance, which is BCSD Taiwan. And but in other countries, we simply do not have data partners. So this means that there are gaps in our database. So that's why all the numbers that you will see later on cannot be interpreted as absolute numbers, but they are definitely showing serious trends. Just wanted to make that clear.
下面我会介绍一些关于全球报道方面的一些数据，但是所有的数据都是基于 GRI 的永续性数据库，所以在此我要做一个特别的说明，因为GRI 的报告 标准是自愿的，也是免费可以供大家使用，但是所有的人使用了 GRI 的标准之后，他不一定会向 GRI 汇报，所以在我们的数据库中不能够收集到全球所有的这个永续报告，但是我们尽可能的去做这项工作。那和我们共同做这项工作的合作伙伴的话，就是 GRI 的 Data Partner 数据合作伙伴。那有的数据合作伙伴的话，他们在这方面非常的尽职，然后帮我们尽可能的穷尽这个地区的报告。那有的地区我们甚至没有这样子的数据合作伙伴，所以在下面的数据中，我们只能够说是尽 GRI 的所能收集到的最全面的，但是绝对不是全部的数字，那就会有一些落差在里面。但是它已经能够反映一些基本的趋势了。
So I already mentioned the database. This is a very useful and interesting source that is also free and open. You can consult it at any time. And at the moment, we have over 33,000 sustainability reports in the database. And they come from over 90 countries in the world, and they date back to 1999. And that's actually before GRI had issued its first guidance. Because we also collect non-GRI reports that we can find.
这边有一个我们的数据库的在全球地区的分布图。到目前为止，我们的数据库中已经有收录超过33000份的报告，而且它们是来自超过90个国家和地区，并且这是一个累计的数据，也就是说追溯到90年代。那个时候虽然 GRI 还没有发布它的报告的指南，但是由于我们这个数据库收集的包括非 GRI 的报告，所以它会有一些历史的数据。有一点它现在没有介绍，但是我补充说明的就是大家可以看到这个蓝色有颜色的深浅，那颜色比较深的地区就是报告的数量比较多的地区。那其中我们可以看到台湾的颜色也是非常的深。
So let's first take a look at the transition to G4. As you may remember, the G4 was launched in 2013, and approximately exactly 3 years ago, it was also in May. And there was a transition period set till the end of December 2016. And you can see how gradually people started to transition. And by the end of 2015, this data is actually from April, we could see that over 70% of all reporters had already made the switch to G4.
这边向大家展示的是一个向 G4 过渡的情况。G4 正好是3年前，就是2013年5月发布的。那在 G4 发布的时候，我们有设立一个从 G3 和 G3.1 向 G4 过渡的时期，过渡的截止日期是到2015年的12月31号。所以大家看到在这个表格中有一个紫色的部分代表的是 G4 的报告数量，有一个从13年到15年逐年增长的趋势。
And here we can see what just an overview from the 3 years 2013, 14, and 15 about the division of region and type of reports. And if you can see that, well, the donuts, they sort of speak for themselves. You can see from G4 the biggest, or actually, it's not true. It was Asia who was first, had the largest portion of G4 reports, followed very closely by Europe. But with the G3 and 3.1, it seemed to be more the largest part of the ones who were still reporting on those guidelines were from Europe.
这边是一个 GRI 报告的区域的分布，我们是按照这个州的类别来划分的。那在这个G4的报道状况来看的话，亚洲是超过欧洲，是排在第1位的。那在G3和G3.1的报告数量来看的话，欧洲是最大的。
And here we have the reports from different markets and types. So if we look at the purple bar is G4 and the others are the turquoise one is G3. And you can see in 2014, USA was the largest market qua numbers of reports, and Taiwan was in the 3rd place. But you can see that for the reports that we have in the database for 2015 already, Taiwan is actually in 1st place, and you can also see the the huge purple bar that goes to show how incredibly quick you have been with this transitioning to G4, which is very interesting.
那在2014年的数据来看的话，还是美国是最大的报告市场，而且这个G4的报告量也是最大的。但是由于去年的一个在 BCS 的协助上，我们收集了台湾地区的所有的报告。那在2015年的时候，台湾就已经成为报告数量最多的地区。同时，大家看到这个非常高的紫色的这个柱子的话，就会发现G4的报告比率也是最高的。
It's also interesting just to add that the number of reports in Taiwan is also very impressive.
除了这个G4的数量的比率来看，我们也看一下实际的数据。大家可以看到最左边的那个坐标的话，已经是超过400份。就这个绝对数字的话，也是非常有影响力的，尤其是跟台湾这个国家的大小和经济规模来做比较。
And this is G4 reports by adherence level. As you know, we have two different levels of in accordance in G4. That's the core version and the core and comprehensive version. And then it's also possible, of course, to register your report as GRI reference. And you can see there that in all 3 years, the largest proportion of the reports were core.
这一页展示的是一个G4报告的依循的方面。依循的话，在GRI的报告里面是有2种，一种是核心，一种是全面。当然，您也可以是仅仅只是reference 就是参照。我们可以看到，核心的依循选项是最受这个报告者选择最多的一个。
And here we have in accordance options divided by regions, just out of interest to see if there is any difference there. And there we can see that actually that's Europe and Latin America and the Caribbean. They have a slightly higher proportion, actually followed by Oceania, of comprehensive reports. But of course, the larger proportion remains the core option.
这边是一个对于区域的依循状况的一个划分。虽然总体上来看的话，依然是在所有的地区选择核心依循的最多，但是我们看到每个地区还是有一定的区别。比如说在拉丁美洲和加勒比海域以及欧洲的话，他们选择全面依循的比率相对来说会高一些。
It's interesting to see as well that in North America, close to 30% of the reporters, they choose not to declare an option. They have a GRI reference report, and actually the proportion in Asia is quite high as well. I would guess it's like 22%.
同时，大家看到最右边这个灰色的栏目，它是指的是参照GRI reference reports。那这一部分的话是在北美以及亚洲相对来说比较高，都是有超过20%，接近30%的样子。
And to take a look at these are combined numbers from the 3 years 2013 to 15 about the organization size, and you can see that there's the largest one or the biggest proportion comes from large companies and obviously M&Es as well, multinationals, and there's a very small proportion of SMEs, of SME reports, only about 10% of the reports in the database.
那过去3年从报告机构的规模来看的话，依然是大型的跨国企业和大企业他们报告的比较多。那中小型企业的话是不到10%的报告比率。
And this is also very interesting always to look at what sectors are the biggest reporting sectors, and this is on a global level. And we can see that the financial services sector is the biggest reporting sector in both the G4 and G3 reports in the 3 years, followed by energy and food and beverage products. And then after the 3 top ones, then you can see that there's a slight difference in the rating, but the sectors remain the same more or less.
我们一直都非常关注各个行业的报道状况。那在过去3年中，不管是 G3.1 和 G3 的参照的报告，还是 G4 的话，金融服务、能源还有食品与饮料这3个都是排名前3的。在后面的7个的行业，虽然根据不同的报告的指南标准略有差异，但是基本上也都是一致的。 它们分别是这个化工、电子元件与这个设备制造、采矿、能源公共事业、电信、房地产还有建筑。
And it's interesting actually to see that the technology and hardware sector in the G3 reports is in the 9th place, but when you look at the G4 data, it's in 5th place. And it wouldn't surprise me that that's because there are so many technical hardware companies in Taiwan, and we have already seen how quickly they transitioned to the G4. So this is probably reflected in the data.
比较有趣的一个排名的变化，就是在 G3 和 G3.1 的报告排名的情况来看，这个电子这一块的话是排名第9位，但是一旦转入到 G4 这边来看的话，他们迅速的上升到第5位。我个人认为的话，这个是和台湾地区有大量的电子行业的这个企业做报告，并且采用 G4 的报告，使得总体的数据有一个显著的上升。
And now we're going to focus a little bit on 2015, and now when we look at 2015 reports only, then we can see that the numbers are slightly different. Europe is leading with 36, followed by Asia, which is also, according to the KPMG study, the largest or fastest growing reporting market.
刚才看了在G4过渡时期的一个3年的集合数据，我们现在来专注看过去1年，就是2015年的报告状况。按地区的分布来看的话，目前欧洲是最多，然后亚洲排名第2。也根据 KPMG 的调查表明，亚洲确实是在过去的2年增长最快的地区。
And if we look at the countries, the type of countries that issue sustainability reports, then we can see that the largest numbers come from OECD country, and DAC stands for countries that receive assistance from OECD, and LMICT is lower middle income countries, and what was it again?
I would just
yes.
这个的话是一个GRI根据国家的类型来做的一个划分，它刚才是要解释右边这分别代表的是什么。那 OECD 大家都比较熟悉，那 OECD 的这个 DAC 是从 OECD 国家直接受惠的这个他们的发展援助的地区。然后这个 DAC 这个地区的话，它也分了2类，一个是高收入的和低收入的。那这个浅蓝色的就是23%，这个对应的是相对来说是中高收入的国家。那这个颜色稍微深一点，就10%代表的话是接受 OECD 援助的收入比较低的一些国家。那颜色最就8%代表的话是既是非 OECD 国家也不接受他们的援助。那这个主要是想表明一种报告的数量和他们这个国家经济发展程度的一种关联。那总体来看的话，这个国家的经济发展水平比较高，然后它的人均收入水平比较高的话，它的报告的比率也相对会高一些。
And again, the sizes, so this is 2015 only, and you can see the numbers are quite similar. There's 11% of SMEs only, and the largest proportion is from large companies, 62%, followed by MNEs, 27%.
这边的显示和前面一个3年的状况分析基本上也是一致的。中小型企业的报告比率依然比较低，大概是10%的样子。
And the type of report, meaning which type of guidelines we used, you could see that in 2015, 48% were G4 already overall, and then there were GRI referenced and non-GRI reports as well, and you could see that the proportion of the G3 versions was really shrinking.
这一部分是2015年的 GRI 报告的参照的一个情况，大家可以看到几乎一半的是参照了 G4， 那使用 G3 和 G3.1 的基本上已经萎缩到不足20%，当然也有很大一部分是非 GRI 的报告，或者是只是参照了 GRI 的标准而已。
This is a bit of a confusing slide, I have to say. There's so much on it. This is to just quickly show the different in accordance option or application level, because that's what they were called in the G3 and 3.1, and they actually had 6 types, and you could see that quickly maybe that the largest proportions of 2015 reports were in accordance core options from G4, 53%.
这页简报档可能对于大家来说比较困惑，数据量比较大，那是因为在我们做统计GRI报告的依循原则的时候，要分 G4 和 G3.1 分开统计，而在 G3 和 G3.1 的框架下的话，它是根据应用的等级有 A、B、C 3个 level， 而在 G4 的情况下是有核心和全面2个 level， 然后我们还把GRI 的这个参照 GRI， 但是没有做宣称他们的依循等级的都做了统计。不过从总体上来看，大家还是可以看到 G4 的核心选项这个是最多的，有超过一半的报告都是 G4 的核心选项。
And finally, we want to look at external assurance of reports. That is something that GRI recommends. We don't really provide any further guidance on how that assurance should be done, or do provide some criteria to be kept in mind, but this is not a requirement in the guidelines. And you can see that at the moment there is only about 1/4 of reports that are externally assured.
当然，我们也一直非常关注外部确信的情况。虽然在这个 GRI 的指南中，我们并没有要求所有的企业要做外部确信，但是这一直是被推荐的，为了能够增加报告的可信度。但是在全球范围来看的话，使用外部确信的比率依然不是很高，目前是28%的样子。
And these are the sectors we're comparing here, 2014 and 2015. And again, the purple pillar is the G4, and the turquoise one are the 3 versions. And then we can see that, we had already looked at this from another angle, and the facts remain the same.
那我们做2014跟2015年这个产业报告比例的比较的话，还是可以发现，依然是刚才所说的排名前10的这几个行业，他们的报告比率比较稳定。同时 G4 的和 G3 的这个分布的话，也是可以看到，跟左图比较的话，紫色的这个柱明显会高了很多。也就是说，像 G4 的过渡，在各个行业也都是具有一定的普遍性。
Yes, so we thought it might be interesting to compare the 3 regions in the Greater China region. And so we looked at the top sectors in mainland China, and then we saw that the top sector is actually financial services, followed by energy utilities and automotive.
我们觉得看各个地区的产业的分布情况，也应该是一个非常有趣的发现。比如说，在大中华地区的话，中国的状况是金融和能源公用事业，还有汽车制造业，这3个的话是排名前3的报告机构。
And when we look at Hong Kong, you can see again that the financial services are the biggest market there, 15% versus 14% in mainland China. But here there is a slight difference in the second and the third place, where conglomerates are in the second and real estate in the third.
而在香港地区的话，跟中国一样，也是最大的当然是金融行业，但是他们的排名第2和第3的非常具有地区特色，分别是混合型的这种大型企业，还有房地产。
And when we look at Taiwan, then maybe not surprisingly, and supporting my assumption earlier, the technology and hardware sector is in the biggest reporting sector with 20%. And you can see that the financial services sector is here in the 12%, just after the chemicals, 13%.
而在台湾，就像我刚才说的一样，一定是有非常大量的这种电子和硬件制造的企业的报告率，才使得有一个全球的这种G4的变化。所以在台湾最大的这个报告行业的话是科技电子制造业，然后接下来是化工和金融。
And of course, you will find out much more later in the day about reporting in Taiwan specifically. That's what we are here to find out all about. But I wanted to, before I conclude, I wanted to talk to you about something that's now the next big thing at GRI, what we call the next era of sustainability reporting. We are transitioning our guidelines to a standard, and I want to explain to you a little bit what that means. And I'll do so in a few slides that have been developed by my colleagues back in Amsterdam in the standards division.
那关于台湾具体的情况，也就是我们今天这个报告会更专注的讲到的。那接下来我在结束我的发言之前，我想利用这次机会给大家分享一下 GRI 目前正在关注的从指南到标准的一个转型的阶段，也就是我们称之为永续报告的下一个时期。这个后面的几页是由 GRI 的全球永续标准委员会来提供的，由Ásthildur来做介绍。
Okay, and you can see that these slides are slightly differently branded than the one that I used before. As a part of our transitioning to standards, we've actually done some changes in our governance structure. And this means that we have actually formed a specific board that is called the Global Sustainability Standards Board, or the GSSB. And this is the board that has basically now the authority over the development of the standards moving forward.
大家可以看到这一页的简报档跟前面在 branding 上有点不一样，就是它最左上角有我们刚才说到的全球永续标准委员会。那 GRI 在从它的指南向标准的过渡中，也进行了自己的治理结构的调整。那过去 GRI 的标准部门的话是 GRI 秘书处的一个部门，也就是 GRI 的一部分。但是在向标准过渡的时期，我们把这个部分独立出来，成了一个专门的委员会。那这个委员会就负责标准的开发。我们所以这一块的内容的话，也是由这个委员会提供，而不是这个 GRI 的秘书处做的。
So transition to standards, what is it? This is a question we do get a lot, and I will do my best to answer, and then I will also be happy to receive some questions from you later, and hope then that I can answer them as well. We're all familiar with with these. This is the G4 as it looks today. We have 2 volumes. We have the reporting principles and standard disclosures, and then we have the implementation manual. So what we are doing when we talk about transitioning to standards, we are basically restructuring the G4 guidelines into a module of GRI standards. And I should like to emphasize that we are not developing entirely new content at all. We are taking the content of the G4 and we are restructuring it.
从我们对外宣称 GRI 要做从指南向标准的过渡开始，我们被问到的最多的问题就是它到底是什么，就是它是什么含义。今天我会尽可能的把它进行全面的介绍，然后因为大家如果有任何问题的话，也可以向我提问，我会尽量的解答。简而言之的话，是大家看到上面2个图片，最左边是大家非常熟悉的 G4 的2本指南，然后最右边的话是我们希望呈现的 GRI 的标准的形式。它会是一个内容的结构上的重组，而不是说我们会开发像 G3 和 G4 一样，这个是一个完全新的内容。但是在这个向标准的过渡中，我们不会把内容做太多的改变，我们仅仅是在组织的架构和结构上进行一些模组的变化。
So, like it says there in the second bullet, most of the changes will be around format and presentations, but the main concepts and content from G4 will be carried forward.
就像第2点强调的，主要是做展现形式上的变化，它的核心的内容还有概念，以及一些指标和记录项都会从 G4 直接沿用过来。
And when we talk about a different format, then we first should be looking at these 3. These will be called universal standards, and this is the foundation standards. This is the standard. This is where you will find information, general information about the standards, how to use them, etc. In accordance options, etc. The second universal standard is what we now know, or will continue to be known as general disclosures, and the third universal standard is the management approach.
右边下面这个图蓝色的3块的话，分别我们称之为普世的标准，或者说基础的标准。那颜色最深的那个蓝色代表的，其实比较像 GRI G4 里面的这个报告原则，还有这是第1本。那第2个就是颜色稍浅的这个2个版本的话，分别是一般揭露项和这个DMA， 就是管理方针。
And then we have 3 sets of standards here, and there's economic, environmental, and social, and these are like thematic standards. And you do already recognize the categories. There is a difference with the social. We will no longer be using the division of the 4 subcategories, but they will all be falling under the social categories. And each of these thematic standards will consist of standards, substandards, I guess you could call them, and these are what we know today as aspects. So the aspects will become individual standards under these thematic sets of standards.
除了这3套基础性的标准之外，还有另外的3套是我们称之为主题型的这个标准，它们分别对应的是经济、环境和社会。大家已经看到有一些变化，就是在 G4 的实施手册中，社会这一栏目我们是有分4个子类别，但是在这边不会再做细分，它们共同都属于这个社会这个系统下面的。
Okay. So why are we doing this? So why are we going through all of this? What will we gain? Moving to standards will allow the standards to be revised independently so they can stay even more up to date. If you think about the way that guidelines are structured today, they are all in one go. And if you want to change something, we have to go and update the whole document. But by dividing this into these different modules, it's much easier for us to actually update each individual module. For instance, when things change within that particular topic or a new topic arises that should be included, this is a much easier way to do that.
很多人问我们为什么要做这个工作，其实在过去很多地区或者是都会直接认为 GRI 的指南就已经是一个标准在使用了。那 GRI 做这个像标准的过渡又是为了什么呢？那第一个最主要的原因就是会使得标准的它的更新和跟进更加的独立以及及时一些。因为我们现在的指南的话，它是一个一体的内容，如果对它做任何更新的话，都需要对整本指南做全部内容的更新。但如果说做了这个标准化的过渡以外，我们可以把一些新的话题，或者说原有的话题中的新的内容进行非常及时的更新，也就使它的使用率和更高一些。
And I actually already mentioned this. It's easier for us to add if there are any new sustainability topics that arise. And we have just seen in the past decade or so that this is the case. And then it's very nice to be able to just include them without having to do everything all over again.
这一点刚才他也提到了，就是我们现在发现，尤其是随着社会的变化速度的加快，这种新的永续发展的议题不断的增加的话，我们做这样子的一个变化，可以更加容易的增加新的永续发展的议题在报告中。
And also, they make the standards more accessible for new and existing reporters because it's easier to work with them when they are divided into these different sections or modules.
另外也增加了它的可获取性和学习的一个方法，因为现在它如果是一个整本的非常复杂的指南的话，会很多机构一看到之后觉得，是不是很难使用，或者是它太复杂。但是如果说做了一个标准化的过渡，把它拆分成不同的模组的话，会方便新的这种报告者来使用 GRI 的标准。
Because obviously the new standard will, just like the current G4, be focused on materiality and the importance of identifying your most material standards and moving forward and report on those. And that if the standards are divided in the modules, it makes it easier to identify the ones that you have identified as most relevant for you.
向标准过渡之后，有一个沿用的原则，就是重大性原则。我们依然是鼓励和希望企业能够，仅仅是就他们的重大性的议题进行揭露。做了这样一个划分以后，可以更加方便企业能够去把他们的重大性的议题去在报告中使用和揭露。
And they should also help to support more consistent and higher quality reporting.
那比较重视的，我们在这个 GRI 的推广过程中非常重视你的报告质量的提升。那提升报告质量的其中一个方法之一的话，就是保证这个数据的连贯性和它的准确性。那做一个标准化的过渡的话，也会使这部分的内容得到更好的保障。
And also, this should help with referencing when the GRI standards are being referenced, for instance, in policy initiatives. because by dividing them into individual standards, it's easier to reference to a specific standard than having to reference to the GRI guidelines as a whole, as is the case today.
最后一点的话，是为了便于这个各个地区的政策或者是倡议能够参照 GRI 的标准，因为当它是一整本的时候，可能对于不是所有的这个政策制定者，他们都是适用的。比如有的这个像环保部，他们可能会关注环境的一些标准，那是社会保障部，他们可能会关注一些社会的标准。那做这样子一个标准的划分了以后，可以更加方便全球各地的政策制定者他们去参照不同模组的 GRI 标准。
So how to use and reference the standards? We will continue to have two options, the core and comprehensive options, and the standards are designed to be primarily used as in accordance, like the guidelines are today.
使用这个标准的话，其实在依循方面还是和基思一样，我们会有这个依循选项，而且也是有核心和全面两个。
And the core and comprehensive options, they will stay more or less exactly the same as they are today. There will be some minor tweaks based on the experience that we have had from or experience from reporters since the launch of the G4. But this is something that we have been monitoring very closely, and we want to use this opportunity to make any necessary adjustments. But they are just minor.
那符合这个这个 GRI 标准就是核心和全面两个选项的话，在具体的要求上和 G4的要求基本一致，但是我们会做一点点描述上的更新。那这些更新也是基于过去3年 GRI 一直在这个了解全球各地的使用 GRI 的报告标准，他们遇到的一些问题，或者在这部分有什么模糊不清，或者是引起歧义的地方，我们在这个像标准过渡的内容更新中，都会把这部分做更加详细和具体的界定。
And then organizations will also be able to use individual standards from the selection of standards in their content to report on some specific issues. And then this would be called an SRS reference claim, because the standards will from now on be referred to as Sustainability Reporting Standards, or SRS. That's another term that we have to all get used to.
另外一个就是在这个参照这方面，因为过去的 GRI 的参照就是一个 GRI reference 简单而已，但现在的话使它更加具体化了，这也回应到他刚才解释的，像标准过渡会增加它的可获取性。其中一个就是以后会非常明确的声明是参照了哪一套，因为刚才有3套基本的，然后还有3套是话题性的。那在这个 reference 过程中，你需要表明你是参照了哪一个套件，然后比如说以后不再会叫 GRI G4 或者是 G3.1，我们会叫SRS， 就是 Sustainability Reporting Standards， 永续报告标准。
And all the use of the standards requires a specific claim. This is a specific sentence you should be putting into your report, and this is to be found in the foundation standard, which is a very important standard moving forward, because here you get basically the rules of the game, how to use the new standards.
那之后所有的这个报告的话，都必须有一个专门的声明，这个声明就会告诉大家参照了SRS 的哪一个这个说明的话会在SRS 101，也就是基础这一块进行详细的介绍。
And so just to give you an overview of the changes and improvements, then firstly it's the new modular structure that I mentioned, and then, sorry, 2 minutes then. Yes, I'll speed up. I think this is the last slide anyway. So there's the new modular structure. We have improved clarifications on how to use and reference the standard. There is a clearer distinction between requirements, recommendations, and guidance, something that was not entirely made clear in the G4. And there are additional clarifications for G4 concepts, where we've also found out through feedback from the users that this can be improved. And then we will also do overall editing to review to improve the usability. meaning simpler language and some content will be merged or relocated.
最后这一页我们总结了一下，像标准的过渡中会有哪些具体的变化。那第一点就是刚才反复强调一个结构和模组上的一个变化。那第二点呢，就是把这个如何使用和参照这个标准的做一个很清楚的一个澄清。那大家以后在参照这个标准的描述中会更加的准确。第三点就是把要求、建议和指导这三个也就是在原有的这个 GRI 的 guideline 中，一般对应的是 shall、should 和 could 这样子的一个做了非常明确的一个划分。那第四点的话，就是把 GRI 一些概念做了更清晰的定义或者是一些补充的定义，使大家能够更方便的理解。最后一点就是一个全面的增加它可用性的一个改进，比如说会使用相对来说比较简单的语言，便于大家阅读和理解。那另外一点就是把一些内容进行一些合并，或者是放在更合适的位置，就是一些重组。
Okay, just a quick recap. We have the universal standards SRS 101, 201, and 301, and then we have the topic-specific standards that will be 401, 501, and 601. And the thematic ones will consist of approximately 33 topic-specific standards that are based on the G4 aspects.
最后总结一下，总共就是一共会有6套，那分别是 SR 101、201、301、401、501和601。那1到3的话，分别是基础的标准；4到5的话，就是以话题进行划分的。后面的这3个会加起来，一共有33个具体的话题。那么它们是由以前G4的方面转变过来的。
Very importantly, the last bullet that we continue to focus on the material topics only in the reports.
最后要强调的依然是对重大性原则的突出。
Yes, and I think this is really the last slide. The standards are out for public comment. As you know, GRI always asks for feedback on everything we develop, and I hereby invite all of you to go to our site and give feedback as possible until the 17th of July. And we are expecting to release the new standard after the feedback has been taken into account in October. And then moving forward, after the release, we will be developing training material, webinars, etc., support materials. And it is expected that the transition period will be until January 2018, by which time everybody should be starting to use the standards.
这应该真的是最后一章了啊！这边是一个时间表，就是我们告诉大家这个整个的时间进度。当然，这是一个 GRI 预想的，目前正在公众意见征询阶段。到7月17号的话，都欢迎大家通过 GRI 的这个 GSFP 的网站去提交大家的意见。我们会在接下来3个月去进行意见的整理。那么第一套的这个东西会在今年的10月份出来。那接下来从10月份之后，我们会尽可能的提供一些教育训练或者是网络会议，还有提供一些指导的关联的一些文件，帮助大家向这个新的标准的过渡。期待是在2018年的1月把整个向标准的过渡完成。当然，这个时间表会根据我们获得的这个反馈的意见的数量以及内容去有可能做一些调整。
And again, please go to our website and give us your feedback. It's very easy. It's a very user-friendly portal. There are so many reporters in Taiwan. We really feel that your voice needs to be heard. So please go and tell us what you think. Thank you very much. This was truly the last slide. Thank you.
Thank you. 那我们谢谢 Ásthildur 的总监精彩演说及远远的一个及时的说明。接下来为中场休息时间，并请各位来宾于4点后再次回到现场来，谢谢大家。